Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on a Thursday evening, right before the NBA Finals kickoff. So we know everybody's going to be tuning in for that. Big basketball fans here on this show. Kind of half joking there. I barely pay attention to the NBA these days, but I hope everybody has a great time watching the NBA Finals. It's kind of like the last pre-summer thing that happens, and then we kind of get right into training camp after that. So a few short weeks away from that kicking off here in a bit in July. So we got some fun stuff to talk about tonight. We're going to discuss whether or not Chargers players will bounce back in a positive way or face some negative regression. Maybe we'll kind of discuss like scaling and things like that. But we wanted to address this conversation before we got to training camp and doing all that stuff. So it should be a fun one. And joining me to do that is my guy, Tyler, as always. Tyler with a normal voice today. So unfortunately, no more Mustafa impersonations tonight. But Tyler, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine. No, I'm kidding. I'm doing fine. It was a long road to get back to here, and frankly, this is the only thing that I've done the last few days. I've just been bedridden and like either sweating it out or like throwing up one night. So it's been a fun 3 days, but happy to jump back on and have something to actually like need to wake up and be up for, because without football, without school, there's nothing else. So I'm glad there's this. So I'm glad to get to talk to you and everybody in the chat, because it's been a fun few days.
Yeah, I totally get that. So I mean, you get the whole month of June, a whole month of July, and then part of August. So my school is a year-round school, so we get 3 weeks off at the end of every single school year, and then we're right back at it. So to me, that's like the perfect amount of break. 3 weeks, and I'm good. Go on a vacation, play some golf, relax, and then you're right back at it. To me, that's great. 2.5 months off of summer gets a little old at certain points for me personally, but that's just the way that my brain works. So again, have a fun conversation today. We're going to present these names, and then we'll have a discussion whether or not we feel like they can bounce back in a positive way, maybe face some negative regression, and then talk about some of those scales. So we were just talking about our summer vacation. Tyler and I are going to, kind of reset, recharge, take some time off. Chargers players are coming up on that too. And we encourage anybody who's looking for a positive bounce back to check out Unified Healing. This segment of today's show of this of the Guilty as Charged podcast, it is presented by Unified Healing. This is a great way to take care of yourself, kind of have a check-in of your mental health, of your physical health. It's a great, innovative global network of wellness centers that is powered by the Energy Enhancement System. Again, this system this technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. It's a great way to unplug and kind of recharge the batteries a bit. So we encourage everybody to go check out unifiedhealing.com/guilty to find the nearest center towards you. And hopefully the Chargers are doing that as well. So we're going to frame this as a custom segment, thanks to our friends at Unified Healing, players who are going to bounce back. Tyler, if you have to pick one player who maybe had a rough year in 2023, who's due for some positivity in 2024, where would you point towards first?
Let's speak it into existence, and that's Joey Bosa. Now, did we just do this? Yeah, we kind of did just do this. But I do believe, unlike some other cases, Joey Bosa, you can at least look at his scenario statistically and see where like he still is that guy. When he's on the field, he can still be that guy. It all just amounts to how healthy he is. Definitely encourage anyone to get healthy and be healthy or whatever. The last few days have not been fun for me. The last few years have not been fun for Joey Bosa, to the point where I even think in the eyes of half or more of the fan base, he's no longer much the favorite. This is a guy that we've loved watching when he first entered the league and had 2.5 sacks against the Raiders. Great player, but the injuries, some off the field things, maybe even some political alignments have soured his view in the eyes of fans. But this is a player who Jim Harbaugh came out and said that he was as good, if not better, than Khalil Mack when he was on the field in some stretches last year. And while I disagree, I can look at enough statistics and I look at a couple of numbers and go, I mean, Harbaugh does have a point, and that's excluding looking at film. Joey Bosa was very good when he was on the field last year. The problem was being on the field. So I think when you look at Joey Bosa's season, I don't know his upcoming season. I don't know if he's going to have 100 pressures. I don't think he's going to surpass what Khalil Mack did last year. There's no like big Max Crosby season, Myles Garrett season incoming, I don't think. But given the per play stats and given who he is, how much Jesse Minter seems to just love him and discuss him, like the way they talk about Joey and Khalil, they're the main two. There doesn't seem to be a discussion right now about Thule, really mixing in and playing ahead of Joey or anything like that. Like, Joe Ortiz came out and said, like, well, Jesse Minter, like, why are you so happy? And it's like, oh, I see why you're so happy. It's because those two guys are on the field. That's Joey and Khalil, because they were raved about how much he loved this guy and these guys. So I just think that naturally with health, with Ben Herbert, if we believe in Ben Herbert as much as we do and the team does, he'll at least scare Joey into playing 2 more games. Works out the rest of the way. So, I think naturally it has to be Joey because 1, I think he can do it based on statistics, and 2, like I think the health part will get a bit fixed this year.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why the Chargers went out and signed Bud Dupree, so they have somebody who can take a bit of something off the plate of Joey, and I think part of that is the dirty work. And I think Joey, if you look at statistically, he actually had his best season as a run defender last year than he's had basically since like 2019 or 2019. A part of that, I think, it was his decision to put on some weight last season. And I know that like every single year he gets to training camp, he's like, I feel great. Like, I feel fantastic. But he had the core surgery, and that really, I think, allowed him to kind of get back to where he wanted to physically. We saw that strength. We saw that power more often. And then, unfortunately, he has the toe injury, which I know people like are sick of Joey, but he played through a broken toe. And if you have ever played football in your life, you know how painful that can be, even if you just have turf toe, let alone a broken toe. And then, of course, he has the foot injury, which essentially knocks out his season. But if you look at the games where he's healed from the toe injury and before his foot injury, if you look at basically the post bye week until he got injured, he was playing at the same level that we're accustomed to seeing him play at in terms of an elite edge rusher. And I think you can see that big difference in particular in terms of true pass rush win rate and true pass sets. So in 2023, or excuse me, in 2022, he had 74 true pass set rushes, and he had a win rate in those rushes of 20.9%, which was by far the lowest of his career. He's generally kind of like a 24 to 26% kind of range. And in 2023, he had 109 rushes against true pass sets and had a win rate of 25.7%, which you're talking about a near 6% increase from where he was at in 2022. So I understand, like, if you doubt that he is capable at this point of playing 17 games, I'm kind of at that point as well. But I think if you kind of look at this from the lens of like, okay, so he's not going to play 900 snaps. He's not going to play 60 snaps a game. But if Joey can give you 40 snaps a game and Bud Dupree can make up the difference there, then I think Joey can have a highly efficient season. Maybe it doesn't result in a 10 sack season, but at the same time, like when he was on the field last year, he was getting sacks left and right. It was his most sack heavy per game season since 2019. So to me, it's all a matter of, can the Chargers do enough to work in the margins to help Joey stay healthy? And if he can stay on the field, I have all the confidence in the world that a 15 game season for Joey results in his most efficient, most productive season since 2019. I think he's physically in the right space. I think he's mentally in the right space. He has all the help in the world. Jesse Minter's going to scheme up all kinds of pressures and things like that to take pressure off of him. And I think Joey's just going to get a ton of one-on-one situations. So maybe it doesn't result in 14, 15 sacks or the 18 that Khalil Mack had, but I think there's a world where he can get another double-digit sack season, great defense against the run, and just stay healthy. To me, that's like the most important thing to define success for Joey is, can he play more than 14 games this year?
Yeah, I'd be curious to see how the distribution of snaps goes, because I looked last year, and even this surprised me with the Ravens. And I know it's a different set of players, different ages, different healths, whatever, different scheme, different coordinator. But the Ravens, like Kyle Van Noy only played 42% of the snaps. Clowney only played Clowney played the most of the edge rushers. He only played 56% of the snaps.
Yeah.
Owe played 37%. Like Khalil Mack had to pay 81%. Tuli played 74%.
Yeah.
And Joey, when he was playing, it was like 70 to 80 to 90%.
Yeah.
So I just think that, yeah, sure, maybe they won't get the same, they might not play 900, 1,000 snaps this year, but good. Like Joey may play fewer snaps per game, but he's going to play more games and he's going to be more available and fresher. And I think that's entirely the point. I don't think Jim Harbaugh, Ben Herbert, these guys are stupid. They understand that Joey on the field is, when he's healthy, when he's good, he's better than Tuli, arguably better than Khalil. I wouldn't say that right now after the season Khalil just had, but he could get to that point, and he is younger. So I think that, I don't think he'll get as many snaps, but his efficiency will go up, and I hope he's healthy. And that to me is the bounce back season. Like, I don't think he needs to be, some all-pro player. I'm not putting those expectations on him, but him being out there for 14 or 15 games would be a huge win.
Yeah, I think if you look back at the way Brandon Staley and the previous regime handled the edge rushers, it was kind of similar to the way that they handled Justin, right? Where it was like, we're going to put so much on Justin's plate and he's going to be the offense. And I can understand why. Like, that's not a super uncommon approach. I mean, there's the Peyton Manning offense. There's the Tom Brady offense. It's not like they have different systems. It's what they want. I mean, Joe Burrow now in Cincinnati, like, he is the offense. Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, he is the offense. So that's not super uncommon. From an edge rusher standpoint, though, when all three were healthy, Tuli like kind of had some games where we just didn't really see him all that much because they just played the two as much as they possibly could, and then Tuli kind of came in as a breather type of player instead of like an impact player. So it's just a situation where I think we'll see Joey play, a much more supporting actor role as opposed to the main character. And I think that's a role at this stage of his career where he can thrive. And I think across the board, you look at Khalil Mack, he was super efficient last year. Even if you just take out the Raiders game, he was still a highly effective, efficient pass rusher. But Tuli kind of trailed off at the end. Bud Dupree in Atlanta kind of tailed off at the end. Joey is known to tail off at the end. So if you play less snaps and just say, hey, like, we're going to keep all of you fresh, we're going to keep all of you healthy, I think that's going to bring the best out in all of them, even if their counting stats are not as high.
Yeah. And so I guess then naturally we can jump into not regression, because I hate the word to be using here, but we have to talk about Khalil Mack at this point because of the same reasons, not health wise, but in terms of the snap counts and being healthy. So 88 pressures, 18 sacks, 52 stops last year. I would never tell Khalil Mack that he can't do it. But to me, it just feels like they're going to be playing him less. So I could see per play stats increasing, or percentages increasing. I could see win rates increasing. I could see him getting more defensive player of the year consideration because he's on a better defense. Yeah. But I think that the raw stats overall are going to decrease. So I hate to say regression. I don't think it's regression, but I think we agree his numbers aren't going to be the same this year as they were last year.
Yeah, I think we can frame this as statistical regression, not like physical regression. Because if you look at, he was coming off the foot injury last season, and he said he didn't really like feel like himself until like halfway through the season in 2022, which is kind of crazy. But you're talking about, 59 pressures in 2022 compared to 88 in 2023. You're talking about 13 run stops in 2022 compared to 33 in 2023. Across the board, 2023 was Khalil Mack's most productive season, and I'm going to stand by that. Like, he was better than his Defensive Player of the Year campaign. I think we will see fewer snaps, so those numbers are going to come down. I would be pretty surprised if he had another 6 sack a game next season, because that's just like incredibly difficult to put out every single season. But again, I'm not going to doubt Khalil Mack. And I think if Khalil is just like at that same level, I think they'll kind of adjust and just say, hey, like, Khalil's going to play 900 snaps again. I think they probably enter the season with the plan of him playing around like 700 snaps, Joey playing around 700 snaps, and you kind of fill in the blanks with the other two. That's just kind of my guess at this point in time. But if Khalil's just like on fire, I think they're going to lead into it, because why would you keep that guy off the field? So I do think the counting stats are due to regress, but if you look at his per play stats, he had a pass rush productivity rating of 10.4 last season, which was 5th highest in the league among edge rushers. 18.2 total pass rush win rate, I think, was 8th. So this was a guy who was performing at a top 10 edge rusher. I do expect that to continue, but I do think the numbers overall in terms of stats do come down a bit.
Yeah, I agree.
So good discussion there. Let us know what you guys think about the two edge rushers here. I want to present Puna Ford's case here because I think like when the Chargers signed him, I look at like his most two recent seasons and I see a lot of pass rush reps. I see that's kind of where he was leaning at. A lot of like 3 technique and 4 technique, 5 technique reps. And so I think you look at his most recent seasons and you see somebody that his previous teams were trying to make him be a pass rusher. And I can understand why they did that because his pass rush ability got better every single year in Seattle. And then you have some defensive changes and things like that. But if you go back and look at his most productive seasons, which would be 2019, 2020, and 2021, in terms of overall impact, it's when he was a true nose tackle. And if you look at his just like run stops and run stop percentages, in those 3 seasons, you see numbers of a true rising star. So in 2019, he was 15th among all interior defensive linemen in run stops with 26. He was 8th in run stop percentage at 9.8. He was 26 in run stops in 2020 with 21. He was 28th in run stop percentage at 8.0. He was 29th in run stops in 2021 with 22. 66 in run stop percentage at 6.2. That's when the Seahawks started to kind of move him away from a true nose tackle type, which is what they initially had him playing. And that's to me like the best position for him. I mentioned the pass rush ability. It increased every single year. His first season in the NFL, his pass rush productivity rating was 1.7 and his pass rush win rate was 3.1. But his 2021 season, his pass rush productivity rating was 4.4 and his pass rush win rate was 11.1. So if you can bring Puna Ford back to the middle of the defense, back to the core of the defense, I think that's where you're going to find the best production aspect of Puna Ford. And you go back and watch the tape and you see some really, really good tape, but the overall impact and efficiency just was not there as a 3-tech, 4-tech. His true position is as a nose tackle. And it sounds like that's where he's at least going to be leaning. I think Otito Ogbonia is probably more of a true nose than Puna would be. So that's kind of up for debate. But he said that right now he's playing more as a nose tackle in the A gaps, basically. And I think that's overall going to benefit him because his last season in Buffalo, like he played 151 total snaps. And that's just not indicative of the player that I think he can be. I've kind of been workshopping this, but of all of the 1-year deals that the Chargers have right now, and there's a lot, I think Puna Ford is probably my pick to have the most impact on the Chargers in 2024 because I think they're going to get him back to his true position. And I think he's going to be a true dynamic force at the nose tackle position for Jesse Minter's defense.
No, that's a really good call. I have to consider all the 1-year deals, but I don't hate that because I don't know who else is playing his specific role. I don't think we can't be sure the others can play it as well as he can. Morgan Fox is not the same body type. We don't know much about a Boygby. Otito flashes, so I guess he's the closest, but not entirely sure. I do like that call though, and I'm curious why they decided to shift him. I mean, like you said, like try to find some pass rush, I guess. And they've sort of been paying for it because then they went out and got Draymond Jones. They went out and got Leonard Williams. Like they've been trying to find some pass rush juice in there. So I don't know if they were just struggling. So they said, hey, Puna Ford, you're going to play this for us. But the idea that he would go back to his maybe a more natural role and role that fits him very well is awesome. The Chargers needed somebody, and I'm glad it's him. It seems like he's in a good spot to rebound. I feel like I've been underrating him, though, this whole time. You look at the stats, you look at the numbers, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what's really here. The age is certainly, like, there. He's not an exciting new young player. Whoa. What the heck? We just had an earthquake.
Oh, I can still see some of your stuff shaking.
Yeah. The whole building just shook.
Whoa.
All right, Puna Ford nose tackle. He's bringing the earthquakes this year, man. Whoa, that was really weird. Anyway,
that's a first for the podcast history.
Yeah, I've never had an earthquake in a live show before. I'm glad my internet's still up. So yeah, I hope he does great, and I hope he brings the whatever that was. He brought the Seattle Quake with him.
The Beast Quake.
The Beast Quake. Yeah.
But I think like the ceiling for the 1-year deals like that probably is Christian Fulton. If Christian Fulton can make it, if he can reach his athletic peak again, and if he can stay healthy, like he probably has the highest upside. But I trust Puna more than I trust J.K. Dobbins at this point. I trust him more than DJ Chark, Hayden Hurst. I'm trying to think of all the other 1-year deals that they have right now. Bradley Bozeman. So I think the floor of Puna Ford is pretty dang high, and I think his ability to make an impact as a run defender and as a pass rusher, I think just gives him a lot of stability. Denzel Perriman's the other one, right? Denzel might not even be the starter for half the season, if the whole season. So, I like Puna. I think the film's great. I think the numbers were great, and then they kind of put him out of position. So I think he is somebody who can begin to thrive here in Los Angeles with the Chargers.
Yeah, I agree. I'll bring up Hayden Hurst then next as a particular bounce back candidate, because naturally his last year wasn't so good. It was the worst year that he's had since his rookie year. So 184 yards last year on 18 catches. He had 18 catches, I feel like, in one day of practice this past week with the Chargers. I'm going to go on a limb and say that if we're looking for the best return or biggest return potentially to double your output from the previous year, it could be Hayden Hurst. Like, as the natural pass catching tight end number one, I think he can go from like 184 to a whopping 350. And again, does that make him an elite player? Not necessarily, but 184, I think he can bounce back from that easy.
Yeah, and we know that Justin Herbert is going to target, the tight end position. I went back and I've been watching some games here and there just to kind of catch up on some things. I had never watched the actual tape of the Packers game, because that was when we were on our cruise and we watched that like live, and it pissed me the hell off. And so I never bothered like watching the tape. But Donald Parham had like a great game in that matchup against the Packers, and Justin he loves throwing those posts and those seam routes to the tight ends, and it doesn't really matter who it is, whether it's Donald Parham, Jared Everett, Jared Cook, Hunter Henry as a rookie. He loves throwing over the middle of the field to tight ends, and I think we could see a world where Hayden Hurst is obviously the beneficiary there. I don't expect a ton of passing production from Will Dissly, so I think Hayden is really naturally going to be that guy, and he's already earning his trust. So it's like we talked about last episode. It's it's kind of shocking that this is already happening, that Hayden Hurst and Justin just have this great relationship seemingly already. So I think that's a good call.
Yeah. So not an exciting bounce back, but I needed one for the Chargers.
Okay, so according to Jacob, Puna does a thing where he rubs his belly after a good play. I've never seen that. He was not in Seattle when Brandon Mebane was there, if I remember correctly.
They might have missed each other, but it's pretty close.
Yeah. I think they did, because Puna's first year was 2019, and Mebane was on the Chargers in 2017.
I think even earlier.
He wasn't in San Diego, I don't think.
I don't remember.
Okay. Well, anyways, I think that's hilarious that Puna picked that up in Seattle after Mebane did. So
great.
Maybe I'll continue. Your mom says it was a 3.6 earthquake.
Wow. Amazing.
Also, it was recently your mom's birthday. So happy birthday, Mrs. Shu.
Yes, tomorrow. Tomorrow's my mom's birthday.
Tomorrow. Okay. Mm-hmm. Happy early birthday. I saw you guys went out last weekend. So happy birthday. Okay, so I'm a little conflicted on this one. I don't really know where to lean, but Gus Edwards, I think, is an intriguing option one way or the other here. So I'm going to present some numbers, and then we'll kind of have a discussion here. If you look at his overall counting stats, 2023 was his best season. He had over 800 yards rushing, 13 touchdowns, and it made a ton of sense why the Chargers would go out and sign him. Obviously, the scheme familiarity and contract, everything makes a ton of sense. But it was his heaviest workload season in his career. It was really like the first time he had stayed completely healthy for all the entire season long. And it was obviously the first season where he was the guy for the Ravens. So he had 211 attempts for the season. But it was also his least efficient season. Up until last season, he had always averaged at least 4.8 yards per attempt. And in 2023, that number was at 4.1. So that's a pretty big difference. There was an injury in 2022 as well, which caused him to miss a lot of games. Or that might have been 2021, actually. Yeah, 2021, excuse me. So, prior to that injury, he was consistently above 5 yards per carry. Like, this guy was super efficient, super effective. And yards after contact per attempt, which, as we know, is a very important stat, he had always averaged at least 3.2 yards after contact. Last season was at 2.76. So efficiency wise, he was not at his usual level, but counting stats wise, he had his best season. He played the most snaps of his career. He had the most attempts of his career. So I was a little conflicted with like how to frame this, because last season, like overall, you can definitely say it was his best, most productive season. But then at the same time, like the per play stats were not as great. So I think part of this is, do you view last season as his best season, or do you think it was just kind of a production of the volume? And then also, like, what is his role here? I think is also a determining factor here. So I wanted to bring up Gus. I don't know if he classifies as a bounce back or a negative regression type, because last season was kind of a mix of both here.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Where do I even start with that? So part of it is, so you look at like, okay, why were we so excited they got Gus Edwards, other than the fact that he's a bigger back? Pairing with Greg Roman again. And we talked about, okay, with Greg Roman, the per play stats were great. He was compared to like Derrick Henry on the rushing yards over expected per attempt, et cetera, et cetera. All the numbers were great on a per play basis. But then you look at the raw stats, like you said, and it's not like he had good years, obviously, or 5 yards a carry, 700 rushing yards. But he didn't have his best like raw numbers rushing total season. But then I think, okay, in those years, I'm guessing, actually, no, not necessarily true, because we talked about this recently. I would say that he had to split with some other players who were better, but some years, like, not necessarily. I forget which year it was, where it was Latavius Murray and somebody else, but like it wasn't.
Okay, so you said that, and then I didn't even know that. And then also in 2022, their leading rusher in terms of attempts was Kenyon Drake.
Oh my god!
So they went from Devontae Freeman and Latavius Murray in 2021 because Gus and JK were both injured. And then in 2022, it was Kenyon Drake was their leading rusher. I couldn't believe that when I saw that.
Oh my goodness. And that's the kind of the hang up for me. Like, Gus Edwards is so much right now the only guy that you can rely on to get out there and put up numbers. And NFL's, let's point out that J.K. Dobbins was there. I don't know what version of J.K. Dobbins we're getting. If Dobbins is great and healthy and ready to go, Gus Edwards plays a lot fewer snaps this year. If he's not, it's just Gus Edwards, and it's like Kamani Vidal. How much is he playing? I don't know how much Vidal is playing. So it's tricky to figure out how much he's going to have. So I'll take the easy, maybe the most obvious answer. I think the per play stats have to increase. I think they will increase. And I think that the 810 yards rushing that he had last year, I think that goes down. And I think part of that is you have Justin Herbert, and he's just going to throw it more, and he can throw it more. So I think that the efficiency will go up. But I think the raw numbers will go down. And then what's kind of your gauge on the Ravens offensive line last year versus the Chargers this year?
I expect the Chargers offensive line to be better than the Ravens offensive line was last year. Some of that is obviously contingent on Joe Alt and projecting his obviously rookie season, but the Ravens offensive line last year was kind of a train wreck, and I don't know what to expect of it this year. But by the end of the season, Ronnie Stanley was like rotating series. Like, he couldn't even play a full game. And then they had Kevin Zeitler, who was a really good player. It was kind of a disaster last year. Morgan Moses, who we all wanted the Chargers to sign back in the day, was also kind of underwhelming. So they had Tyler Linderbaum, and he was fantastic. John Simpson, a good run blocker. But I think the potential of the Chargers offensive line in 2024 is significantly higher than what the Ravens had last year. question marks. Obviously, what does Zion Johnson look like in his third season?
Right.
Who plays right guard? Can Joe Alt hit right away? If the Chargers can maximize this offensive line, I think the potential is there for them to be, like a top 12 to 15 unit, which would be fantastic, coming off of, losing Corey Linsley and all that. So I think the Ravens last year were probably like a top 18 to 22 unit. Like, it was on paper pretty bad, but Lamar also covers up a lot of issues.
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay. So do you agree per play stats increase, raw stats decrease?
Probably. I went back and looked at like the entire split of while Greg Roman was their offensive coordinator, and it kind of seems like all three running backs on the roster, whoever the three running backs are, all are going to touch the football. It kind of seemed, just like based off of like a quick glance, like quick math, like you have a lead back who's kind of around like 40% distribution, and then you have the other two who get kind of like 30% to 20% of the other touches. So, I do expect Gus to lead them in touches, but he's not going to have as many touches as he did last year, because the Ravens didn't really have other options to do the dirty work. There are other backs besides Gus Edwards were Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell and Melvin Gordon and Dalvin Cook. Like, it was just kind of a weird collection of bodies. So there wasn't anybody else to really challenge him in terms of total carries. So if I had a guess in terms of like touches, I think Gus probably is like around 12 to 14 range per game. And then J.K. Dobbins or Kamani Vidal are kind of like at 7 to 10. And then the other one is, 4 or 5. So it is going to be a bigger split than I think some people would expect. If you're a fantasy guy, I probably would stay away from the Chargers backfield in 2024, just because is JK healthy? Can Kamani Vidal hit? Like, there's just a lot of questions there. But I think all three are going to touch the football.
Yeah, it's such an interesting change because Chargers fans have asked for a bigger running back to be the bell cow, touch the rock a ton. The Chargers finally get their much bigger running back, and he's actually going to maybe touch the ball less per game than the smaller guys that they're used to. So, but again, that's efficiency.
Yeah, and I think maybe those touches increase because you don't have Lamar carrying the football as much. Justin, I think, is going to have. Oh, there was another earthquake, a little aftershock.
Yeah,
Did you feel it too?
Oh yeah, just like 10 seconds ago. That was a pretty good one too.
Dang. I've only felt 2 earthquakes in my life. One was at Disneyland in 2019.
Ride?
No, we were eating, thankfully, but we were eating at Tortilla Joe's. Rest in peace. Love Tortilla Joe's. And we noticed the chandelier was like really swaying, and then we're like, "Are we shaking right now?" And then it was like a 4.5. Like, it wasn't huge.
Yeah.
And then the other one, I was a kid and we were down in San Diego, and that one was pretty big. So it's just the 2 though.
Yeah. Big earthquakes or seismic waves are big fans of Gus Edwards and Puna Ford.
Okay. Tyler, did you have anybody else you wanted to bring up?
I don't know. Do we want to do the Quentin Johnson thing? No.
Well, I mean, that one's tough to classify as like a bounce back because.
What are you bouncing back to?
Right.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think we could have the Derwin conversation.
Yeah.
Although we've kind of said that we expect that to happen previously, but if you look at like Pro Football Focus, they do rankings at this time of year. They had Derwin at 7, and I was kind of even surprised that he was that high.
Mm-hmm.
But just the stats for Derwin last year were not great outside of like the last 4 games after they fired Brandon Staley. But if you're looking at just like pure PFF grades from 2018 to 2022, his grade when he played was a 90.4, which is obviously an elite grade. Last season, his overall grade was 60.1. So it was a pretty big drop off for Derwin. Just, I think there was too many things happening on his plate. The penalties, as Isabel points out in the chat, missed tackles. I think he just never really felt like he could get into a rhythm last year. So what do you kind of expect from Derwin this year now that we've had some time to
Yeah.
simmer and seen some stuff from OTAs. What's kind of your expectation level of bounce back for Derwin?
Yeah, I was definitely more positive on Derwin last year than maybe the fan base. I just thought what he did watching on film was a bit better than what he was projected to be when in the moment in certain games. The killer penalty, which is very like you see it on replay and you see the yards given up, and it's also frustrating in the broadcast. Oh, what a bummer. But then you watch him. I know people joke like cover Travis Ferguson, but like it was, or Jake Ferguson, excuse me. And like it was important in that game that he did that. I think there was many times he did very good things. I was fascinated when Staley got fired that his play elevated tremendously.
It was a completely different player, man.
Way faster, way like it was like, what the hell? What happened? So I expect him to at least be a good player. And what I think in terms of bounce back for him, I don't know that it's the play as much as like how he looks, how he is in the eyes of the fans. I think in the eyes of the fans, I think he'll be kind of returned to the reverence that he had more so his first few years.
Yeah, as Ellie points out, the PFF also had Alohi at 18 on their ranking. So, they had one of the best safety duos in the league according to PFF, and they rely a lot on their grades. And
Yeah,
Alohi had a fantastic grade last season overall. But I think in terms of Derwin, I think Jesse Minter is just going to kind of specialize him a little bit more than we've seen under Brandon Staley. The first season under Staley, it was like, oh my gosh, look at Derwin. He's here. He's there. And like, I myself was like, man, this is awesome. Like Derwin's an edge rusher someplace. He's the safety, free safety, nickel, linebacker. But it does just kind of wear on you to have that much responsibility on your plate. And then, this season, I think we'll just see him true box safety, nickel, linebacker. I think you kind of reduce the free safety snaps. You reduce the edge rusher snaps, obviously, and just kind of let him play around the football. I think that will just, result in a more efficient and effective Derwin James. And I think, we've seen what he can do at his peak. I'll never forget like what he was able to do that first season in 2021. And once he was finally healthy and, the interception against Darren Waller and covering Travis Kelce and blitzing against Isaiah Pacheco and like all that stuff. I might be mixing seasons there a bit, but you guys get the general idea there for Derwin.
Yeah, I think it'll be good this year.
All right. I think that was the last one I had. Thinking of regression candidates was a bit tough because so many of these guys are either coming off of bad seasons or like we don't really know what to make of them. I think we can obviously talk about the team as a whole bouncing back. I think we do believe that. But, there's not a lot of like obvious regression candidates. Like I think you could, obviously make an argument that Denzel Perryman might make a ton of snaps, but he did the same thing last year. He's kind of on the downside of his career anyway. I don't know. That one was tough for me. Positive bounce backs was easy. Like off the top of my head, I was like, boom, 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 boom. Here we go. But negative regression, I think, was tougher for me.
Yeah, I was trying to think of anybody, but either they all had bad seasons or they're just not here anymore. Like
Right.
Keenan would have been a good regression candidate, maybe.
Sure. Everett, maybe.
Yeah, Everett, anybody, but everyone else just kind of had a bad season or they were injured. So everyone feels like a bounce back candidate. I would say like Alohi Gilman, maybe. The aspect that maybe is this the best we've seen of him, or is he just in a contract year? Did he get his contract and will he kind of regress in that way? Because he's built himself up nicely over every year. But I think you and I both agree he actually could take another step forward this year. So I'll bring him up as a candidate, but I don't really feel that regression's in the cards here.
Yeah, and he's going to play a lot again. We know what he can do from like, getting the football. We know what he can do just from a tackling standpoint, coverage standpoint. And there's like a weird portion of the fan base that thinks that Alohi's like not fast and can't cover deep. And I'm like, you guys need to watch the tape a bit more.
Can you cover Tyreek Hill?
Yeah. Literally the fastest player in the NFL. I like my film watching aspect of things. It started with Thule because I had never watched like the end of the season and I wanted to go back and see what Thule was doing. And I was watching the Bills game and Alohi was just all over the place. Like I think if you go back and watch that football game, I think Khalil probably was the best player on the field, but I think right behind him was Alohi. Like I think Alohi dominated that football game against the Bills. He was fantastic against the Broncos down the stretch as well. He's just so consistent and so smart. Like he might not be like the fastest 40 time, but he really overcompensates for it because he just has such a high level understanding of angles and timing and route concepts. He matches routes at an incredibly high level. So I think we feel great about the top two safeties for the Chargers. It's just the other people in that room that we're kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we can talk about it for a brief second. Do you feel the Tony Jefferson tryout's really just do you have a pulse? We're going to sign you kind of situation, or?
I mean, they've signed everybody else that they have visited with outside of Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So obviously there's a lot of interest there, but he didn't play football last season. He was a scouting intern for the Ravens, and he hasn't played more than 10 games since like 2019. So I don't know. Like, they need a safety 3. Like, do I trust Tony Jefferson more than JT Woods at this point? Probably, but which is really sad. But I don't know, man. Like, I'm not going out of my way to sign Tony Jefferson when there's still really good safeties out there, like Quandre Diggs. And I mean, Justin Jefferson, I feel like, or Justin Simmons, excuse me, is kind of unrealistic for them just based off of like where they're at. But like, I would rather have Adrian Phillips right now. If you want to talk about a San Diego reunion, like, let's bring Phillips back, who's played actual good football recently.
Yeah, he'll make it. The question is, how much will he? Do.
Yeah. No, like it's been a minute since Tony Jefferson played some good football, but he was great against the Chargers in that regular season game in 2018. Yep.
Great.
So, yeah. All righty. That's going to do it for us today, guys. Obviously, the NBA Finals are about to start. If you haven't yet done so, we definitely encourage you to go check out prizepicks.com/guilty, where you can take advantage of all of the NBA Finals action. You can take advantage of Major League Baseball. We're not too far away from having Prize Picks be actual about football. It's the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports across the board. I love having like the cross sport specials. It's one of my favorite features of the app, so definitely encourage you guys to go check that out. There's all kinds of finals specials right now going on for the NBA. We're pretty close to the Stanley Cup Finals as well. They're going to have some stuff about that. So please go take advantage of prizepicks.com/guilty. You can get a deposit match up to $100. And using PrizePicks does genuinely help support the show. So we definitely hope you guys are able to do that. Supports us as well as, supports yourself as well. Tyler, any final thoughts before we head out?
Happy birthday, Mom. Happy 25th birthday. I can't believe that's possible when I'm 29. Love you. See you tomorrow.
Nice. Happy birthday, Mama Sharon. We appreciate you so much for all the support every single week in the show. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be live next Monday and then Tuesday, and then I'm on vacation for a couple weeks. So we'll be back a few weeks after that for our training camp wrap up. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff does help support the show. This has been another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. We'll see you next time. As always, bolt up.